Joining us now to break down the whole Pier situation is the newly independent Ken Klippenstein, fantastic journalist covering national security in particular. Great to see you, Ken.
Good to see you, man.
Hey, guys. Good to be with you.
Before first question, where can people follow you? How can they support you? Always do fantastic work. Continue to get bombshell scoops that the mainstream media can't get their hands on, even in newly independent status. So where can people follow you and support?
Check me out on Substack. That's kenklippenstein.substack.com.
All right, so Ken, let's put this latest report up on the screen. Apparently, as of this writing, none of the food aid that moved through the Gaza Pier has actually made it to Palestinians. So tell us what this whole Pier situation was all about and what is going wrong thus far.
Yeah, so the Biden administration refuses to work with UNRWA, the UN agency that provides aid to the Palestinian territories, Gaza in particular. And because of that, that institution is one of the only ones that has the breadth of skill, the resources, the experience, and the relationships on the ground in Gaza to be able to scale that aid. So what ends up happening is the administration finds itself in a very awkward position where it wants this, frankly, PR stunt of being able to say, hey, look at all this great stuff we're doing, even though we're not, seriously suspending support to the Israeli military. And so they're stuck with things like humanitarian aid drops from airplanes that don't reach very many people. And then trying to create this aid pier, which without the help of an institution like UNRWA, they're stuck relying on individual NGOs. And if you look at the public messaging that the press secretary and deputy press secretary of the Pentagon have been putting out over the last several weeks running up to this, they couldn't answer who they're going to actually use to distribute the aid. And they were asked this repeatedly every time they had to punt the question because they don't have an answer to it because there is no NGO level institution that is going to be able to distribute this at scale.
Right. And Ken, what do we know right now about the risk to U.S. forces that are involved, about what has happened and the cost now that has come at the result of this boondoggle?
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting and undercovered parts of the story. I think it's pretty well appreciated, the problems with being able to distribute at scale. But as soon as this thing was announced, I started hearing very early on from service members that this is a risky proposition for the Biden administration. Now, the administration has hewed to messaging that there are going to be no boots on the ground. That's a little misleading because they're going to use a lot of military contractors, and they already have. And in addition to that, troops are moving some of these resources and having set up the pier initially, but the idea is they're not actually going to be operating on the ground. So who they need to operate instead, in large part, has been reliance on the IDF to be able to set things up. The IDF has been inconsistent in saying that they would support it, saying that they're not going to support it. But in any case, there's an IDF logistics facility right next to the aid pier, which is a legitimate military target under the rules of war, and indeed has been a target of fighters as recently as the last several weeks. So there are legitimate military targets right next to this pier. Not just Hamas, but other militant groups able to operate in the area. And so the concerns raised to me privately by service members, and now to some extent publicly by think tanks and such, seems like a really legitimate thing to be worried about, is the U.S. getting a bigger footprint in this and putting those contractors at risk.
Yes.
Ken, I won't be the first to point out the total insanity of this whole boondoggle, because you've got miles and miles, thousands of aid trucks lined up at the border into the Gaza Strip that just aren't being allowed in. So, this pier is not a solution to the aid problem, but pressuring the Israelis to actually allow that aid to enter the Gaza Strip is a solution. So what can you tell us about the overall aid situation, the level of humanitarian crisis, and also, I sort of go back and forth. What is this whole Pier situation? Some expensive, dangerous, stupid virtue signal, basically, to try to persuade disaffected Biden voters that, no, we really do care about Palestinian life? Or is there a more nefarious goal here? Because we've also seen Bibi talking about, hey, maybe we can use this pier for our ethnic cleansing project. We've also seen reporting that apparently the pier was Bibi's idea. So is it just the expensive, stupid boondoggle, or do you see any indications that there's some other intended purpose for this thing?
Well, I think that there are second-order consequences of this facility that might not be intentional on the part of the administration, but which nonetheless can happen, which is to say another, spoke in the hub, as it were, that the IDF is going to be interacting with. And I mentioned that logistics facility. They are building up. The war is not like in the movies. It is a logistical undertaking, and so you have to build things up and create infrastructure to be able to sustain that. And this might provide one more spoke in that hub for the Israelis to be able to conduct these things. And so I think that's a legitimate concern, even if it's not the intent of the administration to do, which I personally, from talking to people at state, get the impression that they just really need some kind of a win short of actually cutting off significant forms of military aid to the Israelis. Now, there's been there's been much ado about the president's threat to suspend certain forms of aid. I did a story on that on my Substack as well, showing that much of that aid is not going to be much of those military weapon systems that he's starting to cut off would not be felt for weeks or months and aren't even relevant to this stage of the conflict, which is in a very late stage. The kind of war fighting that they're going to conduct in Rafah is going to look very different than the air power heavy campaign at the beginning of the conflict. So it's really disingenuous for the administration to say, oh, look, we're considering cutting off things in a way that would change their conduct in Rafah. So all of that to say, they're in a position where they really need a win to be able to bring to, frankly, the entire Democratic base and say, hey, look, we're doing something to help. And unfortunately, this is what they've settled on.
So tell us a little bit more about where this thing goes from here. We've had zero aid. We've had, about $500 million or so that has been invested. The Pentagon itself on the record says that nothing is being delivered to Palestinians. Are they going to ramp up this, operation to try and get more aid in there, or is this just the best that we can expect?
The most absurd part of this is that if you watch the press briefings, which I paid close attention to, I don't think they know what the next step is, because they're frequently being asked these same questions, and they go, "We'll have an answer for you shortly, and we're in negotiations with the Israelis and contractors to try to figure out." So I don't have an answer to that because they don't have an answer for that, and that should tell you how seriously they're taking this entire thing.
Wow. Absolutely insane. Ken, thank you so much. Congratulations on the shift congratulations on your newly won independence. I know you'll be successful there. And thank you, of course, for breaking down your reporting this morning.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure, guys.
Congratulations. Pleasure. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.